Hey guys, Slimber here, and today we're going to do a video on apparently the falling birth rates in the West. Probably not as significant as they make it out to be, but let's just fucking watch this video.
Tonight we tackle declining birth rates in the West and the need to breed. I'm Roaming Millennial, and you're watching Uncensored. And before we get into it, I'd like to mention our sponsor, Trade Genius.
Nope, no free advertising for you, buddy. I'm skipping that shit.
One eternity later.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Today we're going to be talking about birth rates, fertility, the need to breed in general, and this was brought to my attention by an article released by Vox. So this article came out earlier this year, but it was just recently brought to my attention. And apparently 2017 was a historically low fertility rate year for the United States. And what's interesting about this article by Vox is that apparently, in some ways, this is a sign of progress. So according to this article, the fertility rate in the US for 2017 was 1.76 children per woman. And I don't know if you guys know this, but they say the replacement average that you need to maintain a stable population is about 2.1 for most developed countries. I think it varies.
The current population is 7 billion people, almost 8 billion people. Believe me, this is not the beginning of the fucking apocalypse.
Depending on your country's mortality rates.
Yes.
But at least in the US, Europe, it's generally seen to be 2.1.
The places where there's no Ebola, 2.1
Right,
is
just
okay.
like mad childbearing, just deaths. But in the US, Canada, we're pretty lucky. It's actually quite low, but obviously the US is pretty well below this, as are I think most other developed countries, places like Canada, places in the EU, the UK, Germany, things like that. And what's interesting about this story is that it says it's a good thing. It's a sign of the
Reduced
economic
carbon.
progress.
Well, what I assume what they mean by economic progress is people are trying to save money because it's fucking expensive to have kids. So you see, there's a lot of people, when people need help after they've had kids, who say, well, maybe don't have kids if you can't afford them. And well, they're following this. And if it's that concerning, maybe we should implement, systems to make it easier. Like, I don't know, universal child care, universal health care. Systems that conservatives have typically fought in the last, 20 years. Not to say that you're against that. I don't personally know you. I don't know your personal beliefs. I'm just saying Republicans as a party have personally fought these.
Footprint, probably, something like that.
Right. And, I mean, this is something that we see said a lot. The idea that less children is good.
Fuck yeah, kids are fucking annoying.
We see that from feminists. We see that from environmentalists. And in this episode, I want to talk about why that's not so good. Why it's actually kind of actively bad and potentially, I don't want to sound too doomsday, but actually big problems for our society.
Well, it's massive. And frankly, I've seen it within our generation, definitely. I hear it all the time. People saying, oh, no, I'll never have kids. Too much work, not for me. I want to, whatever it is. And it's mind-boggling to me on multiple things. There's just a genetic perspective of every single other organism on the planet lives to reproduce.
Yes, but in our modern day society, it is fucking expensive. You might go bankrupt raising a fucking kid. Not to mention having the kid, which is already expensive with fucking healthcare and shit like that. It's not cheap to raise a kid.
Right, that is literally our most base biological imperative is to breed.
Yeah.
Right.
We're also meant to hunt, but that doesn't mean we're going around fucking killing deers with our bare hands. Well, some people might still, but not everybody. Most people who hunt use a gun or an arrow, and, the rest of the population doesn't hunt, so they just buy food at the grocery store.
And then there's just the basics of your duty to society that I see also as part of raising good people and continuing to propagate a good society.
Right, and that's one of the reasons why I think the whole anti-child thing is wrong, and why it is important for people to have children is to preserve our culture, our Western, Judeo-Christian, whatever you want to have, freedom-loving culture, because I think a lot of the people who say they don't want kids, obviously personal preferences and situations, I I can't speak to everyone's individual circumstances, nor would I want to. I don't know you. But on a macro scale, I think if we as a society care about our values and our way of life, then having kids is paramount to preserving that. You can't expect your values to be perpetuated throughout the world if your culture is collapsing in onto itself by not having children. This is actually something serious. And I think
I'm not sure if you realize this, but most people who aren't going to have kids have probably thought about this already, so you're not winning them over with that argument. They probably just don't care.
You know, for all of the feminists out there who, I guess, are heralding this child-free lifestyle, guess who doesn't like the child-free lifestyle? Right? Islamic cultures who, by the way, are not so friendly towards women's rights. Historically and contemporarily.
And, you know, it's all kind of intertwined with a white guilt narrative. It was sprinkled with a little bit of hedonism of, you know, you just want to live some kind of selfish lifestyle. But the reality is, yes, we are... There will have to be, for your economy to sustain itself, there will have to be a population replacement. Ultimately, that's just the simple truth of it. We're seeing that with especially like Japan, things like that, where it's like at a certain point your economy cannot, if you have an aging demographic, it cannot survive. So yeah, you're going to have to bring in new people, and to a lot of them that's terrific, and it's all part of the same narrative, you know. But the reality that we see, and I think that a lot of people are beginning to realize more and more, is that, you know, America is not Canada, Europe, it's not magic Earth. You know, it's not like a magic little land where people...
You just import them by the busload or boatload, and then all of a sudden, boom, like
They
same
love freedom,
values,
and
same skill levels.
They love...
There are 365 million people in this country. I don't think it is that problematic that a certain amount of people, it's not even going to be a lot. There are still going to be a lot of people that have kids, even when they're older, but they're going to have kids eventually. They're going to change their mind. It's not fucking that problematic if they don't have kids in the first place, because there's still going to be a pretty high amount of people that are going to have kids. Also, a lot of these countries you mention have lower populations, like by a lot, than the U.S.
Feminism, I mean, all the people that are championing their arrival, basically the people that they're inviting in, disagree with the people bringing them in more than the people that don't want them there.
Right.
That's the reality of it.
Right. If you look at the, I guess, core values that most immigrants hold, and especially we're talking about, I think, mainly European countries and Canada to a lesser extent, the U.S. hasn't been hit by this as much. But, you know, the progressives who champion mass migration, their values are in very, very sharp contrast to the people who are actually being welcomed in. And the reason why, I guess, you know, this matters to them, why they're heralding immigration so much, aside from the whole, I guess, gospel of multiculturalism, is because they need to. Economically, societies need to have children, especially the way we have it set up, right? We have more older people than younger people, but guess what? We still need to pay for the older people. We still need to pay for their, their retirement funds.
Well, keep in mind, the older people are kind of at fault for why the younger people are not having kids. Like I've just said before, they fought against programs that would make it cheaper to have fucking kids and raise kids. They fought against that. So they've created their own fucking doomsday. Even though it's not really a doomsday. It's not going to be that big of a fucking issue as you make it out to be. But whatever.
Their healthcare, all of that. So that money needs to come from somewhere. And ideally that would be from taxpayers, from the younger generation. But guess what? There aren't as many of us as there are of the older population. So they say, oh, what do? We have to bring in new taxpayers, new people to sustain the economy. And that's migrants a lot of the time. And, you know, if this was done well, then you would think, okay, they're going to be contributing economically. It's going to work out. They're going to be able to provide the finances that we need to keep the state going. But the people they're welcoming in, guess what? A lot of the times, and we're talking about things on a mass level, and you know, refugees, not the average immigrant necessarily. Again, I don't want to speak to individual circumstances, but a lot of these immigrants that are being welcomed into developed countries in the hopes of being able to sustain the economy and the aging population, they're not actually economic contributors. Mm-hmm. They're not.
No,
So it's actually a detriment. Instead of being able to pay for elderly people's, like, their Medicare and things like that, you actually have this whole new class of people who you need to provide welfare for. It's
right.
the most broken system I could probably imagine.
And beyond the economic ramifications that we're talking about, I think there's the huge misconception that we were mentioning earlier about people not having kids and thinking it's a better life.
Right.
I think that we see it more and more that these people actually are not happier when they.
I'm sure these people are actually much happier taking care of themselves and being able to, I guess, having that extra money to be able to take care of themselves than not only worrying about whether they're going to eat, but whether their kids are going to eat. Anyways, guys, I was going to finish the video, but it is a lot longer than I thought it was, and this video is already 10 minutes long, and I don't want to make the video too long, so, leave a like, leave a comment. Apparently a doomsday is happening, so fuck as many people and impregnate as many people as possible. And, yeah, Slimber out.